Welcome back to the PIG. I'm Erin.
And I'm Kellie. If you've been with us from the beginning, you know that this podcast is an exploration of life, love, loss, and legacy through deeply personal and meaningful conversations.
In our first episode, we introduced you to the boxes, our mother's remarkable act of love and foresight that has continued to shape our lives for nearly 30 years since her passing.
And we had the privilege of speaking with our friend, former pro athlete, and now television and film producer Chris Howard. Instrumental in bringing this story to life, Chris helped us explore how this project came to be, why it matters, and what it means, not just to us, but to anyone navigating love, loss, and the legacies we leave behind.
Chris reminded us that the boxes aren't just about the surprise gifts our mom left for us at key milestones, but about something much deeper, the way her love, her lessons, and her presence have continued to unfold in our lives every single day since.
And today, we're expanding that conversation even further. If you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, we encourage you to go back and start there. But if you're starting here, the PIG is about connection. It's a space where real, deeply personal stories of love and loss in all its forms come to life.
Here, we push past the idea that loss is just something we have to endure. Instead, we explore how it shapes us, challenges us, and, if we let it, guides us toward growth, healing, and deeper understanding.
It's about shifting our perspective from loss being something taken from us to seeing it as an invitation to evolve, reflect, and even find meaning in ways we never expected.
And that's exactly what we're going to do over the next 2 episodes as we meet the men behind the women, behind the woman, behind the boxes. 2 humans who not only mean the world to us personally, but who have been by our sides and watched this journey unfold.
2 men who have built incredible lives of their own, who love us unconditionally, and who have faced their own experiences with life, love, and loss. My husband of 15 years, Marcus, and Erin's boyfriend, Jason.
Jason was actually the one who connected us with Chris, setting this entire project into motion. We'll talk about that, but we'll also dive deeper into both Marcus and Jason's personal and professional journeys, their own experiences with loss, and how supporting us through this process has reshaped the way they think about legacy.
And boy, are all of you in for a treat. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the PIG.
Marcus and Jason, it is so fun having both of you with us today. We've been so looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. After all, the 4 of us have some of the most amazing conversations, and now we get to share some of them with the world.
We can't wait for our listeners to get to know more about you, who you are, the work you do, what it's been like to watch this journey unfold, and how you've each experienced love, loss, and legacy through your own lives. If you remember from episode 1, it was actually Jason who set the whole journey in motion. When Erin first shared the story of the boxes with him, he wasn't just touched. He was deeply moved by what our mom did. But beyond that, he saw the potential for this story to have a profound and meaningful impact on others.
Ultimately, Jason felt this was a story that needed to be shared. And feeling that pull, he was the one who reached out to Chris Howard, knowing he would recognize its significance and see the bigger picture.
So, Jason, before we take a deep dive into your personal journey, your experiences with life, love, loss, and legacy, we want to start there. Tell us a little bit about your history with Chris and what inspired the connection you felt to this story when you first heard about the boxes.
Well, first of all, ladies, thank you so much for having me on. This is it's quite a privilege. I really appreciate it. And watching this grow from hearing a story to an idea to asking if I can share it to setting expectations super low, not knowing what's going to happen, to where you've come now and to see the roadmap of where you want to take this is more than amazing. And it reminds me, we did not choose this path because it was easy, right? We chose this path because we thought it was easy. No, I'm kidding. You guys knew because Marcus and I told you, like, this is how hard this is going to be. And you're like, yeah, but it needs to be done. So it's such an honor to be here. I've known Chris for a long time, almost 30 years. It's a weird thing to say as you get older. Everything's just like, oh, 10 years ago. And then you do the real math and you're like, wow, it was a long time ago. And he is like a brother to me. We've done a lot of fun stuff together. And one of the things that instantly connected us was just being genuine. Chris hung out in a different crowd. He had wild friends, famous friends. And I'm this guy from Montana living in SoCal. but I never pretended to know them. I never pretended that, I had the inside track or they were my friends or anything else. And that created a spot for Chris and I to really become close and be friends, knowing that I wanted to be his friend. I didn't want to be a friend to his famous friend. I just wanted to be his. And I didn't care about the other people. And we'll dive into one of those stories in a little bit. But, the boxes, when I heard it, it reminded me back in 1992, 93, there was a movie that came out with Michael Keaton called My Life. And he had had a turbulent relationship with his father. His dad was dying, and he went home to take care of him, and he would shave him. And he remembered he would talk about, you'd flashbacks to these stories where he would tell people he was having a circus in his backyard for his birthday, and it was just him and his dad. And, his dad would beat the crap out of him and ask him why he lied and why he has to make things up. And it showed the relationship and the impact of what happened. And I just remember that how that relationship of father and son fell apart, and then how he brought them back together before death. And it was very impactful to me because of my lack of relationships with my parents across the board. And every time I'd watch it, I'd cry my eyes out. And you fast forward before even meeting Erin, when I had a podcast, I got a preview of a movie called Mother's Little Helpers. And Erin and I watched that together. And I wanted her to see it because it was like, when I heard your story, this isn't your story, but this is an idea of how your story could be told. And it really was kids flashing back on their relationship with their mom, and what it was like, and how they engage with each other now because of their relationship with their mom, and how they engage with her. And it also, every time I watch it, makes me cry. And I was able to talk to some of the cast and the director and the writer. And it was a beautiful story. And so I was like, I know this isn't yours, but it's probably an idea of your story. And in looking at all those things, when I told Chris, I didn't put a movie premise around it. I didn't put a TV show premise around it. I just told him the way I heard it from Erin. And I teared up a little bit because it is such an amazing emotional story. And, as he said on the podcast, and as I'll say now, he goes, this better be yours. You made it up and it's the best made up story ever. Or you better know the people and I got to talk to them. I was like, yeah, no problem. We'll make it happen. And we were very blessed to do that, and Chris is a busy guy. I think you guys know that. And he gets pulled in a lot of directions and he gets pitched a lot of shows, and he has a lot of friends. And plus, he's Michigan alumni and he does MVP, and he gives back and he runs and he does charity events. And he picked up on this instantly. This is one of those things where you look at it and all those cool movies that make the Oscars that everyone talks about. It's like 12 years in the making, and what a heartfelt story. And yet I got 9 Hulk movies before they made this. And the Hulk movie didn't impact me in any way except for the fact that his pants never rip. And it's just confusing, right? That's the only mess, that's the only mess up that I've got. But the heartfelt ones, people crave and they want more, and it's innate. Like our souls crave for it. And the story of what your mom did and the way you're sharing it and how it's brought you two together is such a beautiful story because it's one we can all live. We can give differently. We can see giving differently. We can engage with the people we love with now differently. And I do because of this story. I mean, I always wanted to travel more than give gifts. I've always wanted to make sure that the things that I'm giving are impactful in some way, that there's always a story around it. And Erin knows me very well. I have a story for everything because I have a story for everything because that's how I communicate. And this isn't a story for everything. This is a story for your heart and your soul and where you want to be and how you want to be remembered. And I think for some, it's going to shine a light and they're going to be like, and it's going to be inspirational. I think for others, it's going to shine a light and they're going to change the way they do things. And then for some, I think initially they're gonna get a little sad because they're gonna realize what they've wasted, like I did. I mean, my first initial tears weren't the emotion of the story. They were me reflecting and thinking, man, I've got some catching up to do, and thinking about where I have done some things like what your mom did and kind of smiling on the inside. And then also thinking where I could have done better and where I need to be better. And so it is a story of momentum and change, that leads to legacy, and it really is a story of love. And the loss is obviously there, but it's such a fertilizing piece because you have to have it for the story to exist, and that's horrible for you guys. But I think it's also, if you're going to have that horrible piece, way to turn it into something that is literally going to change lives.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jason, for sharing all that. Hearing you reflect on that moment and the experience of hearing the story just really reinforces to me how wild and how right this whole journey has felt. It's as if all the pieces have been aligning exactly as they should.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, what you two, and I told you this the other day, I don't, I know there'll be a movie or TV show made. I know this podcast will be successful, and I don't care about any of those things. What I do care about and what I find most beautiful is watching you two engage. Is the calls, the going through the boxes from storage and being like, you wouldn't believe what I found. I can't wait to call Kellie. You wouldn't believe it. I can't wait to share this. And oh my gosh. And that is just something beautiful. Like you two have taken something that has obviously shaped your lives in some ways similar and other ways wildly different, especially when you think about a parent and an older sister and the age separation that you two have, and where you could have really been divided a lot more. And this moment in time, you've just come together so beautifully. And it's such an amazing thing to witness and be a part of. That's my favorite part of this. And that will always be my favorite part of this.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jason. It has been really extraordinary for Erin and I to reconnect through this journey. We chatted about that in the first episode. And I was actually going to ask you what moments from this journey have really stood out for you so far, especially as you've been supporting Erin personally as a boyfriend throughout the process. Is there anything else that's really stood out to you?
The two things, one, I remember the conversation we all had when you guys wanted to start the podcast. We were all together. Um, and Marcus and I were like, yeah, we'll support you guys. And I chimed in, I'm like, by the way, it's the internet. There's assholes, right? But I don't know what's going to happen and I can't protect you from that. But I want you to share, I want you to tell the story. And in watching you two step into an area and into an arena that you've never played in before on all fronts, and not only find success and find sponsors and find people to support you, but also just find a way to where you two are working together and creating great content, creating beautiful imagery, creating social media. I mean, just all the things that you're doing. When I look at all of this, I'm blown away because you already have there's already speed bumps in the road. There's just built-in ones from being sisters, from the age difference. There's built-in bumps across the way, and it seems like you bought the car with the perfect suspension and you just cruise right through it. And I'm not saying it's been easy, but I'm saying the way you two have carried yourselves and the way you two have taken on challenges and the way you two have just totally embraced this process of new, of just wanting to learn, wanting to share, wanting to create the best platform where some people would have cut corners or just thrown some things up. You've put so much heart into this and so much real raw emotion that I get to see behind the scenes that then comes out in this beautiful way. It's like tilling a field and then watching it grow. And it's in a hyper speed where there's a moment of tilling the field and it's the raw emotion of finding something in a box or a story or a memory that just blows you away. And I get to see that from Erin's side. And then all of a sudden it's a field of sunflowers. And the way she works with you and expresses it and the way it comes out, those are my favorite things. And the ability to do that and come to a podcast that could be a downer, that could be sad, and to bring light and levity and passion and inspiration to it instead is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Jason. I really appreciate that. Speaking of storytelling, real fast, in episode one, Chris teased up some story about Scarlett Johansson at Joseph's in LA. Are you going to let us in on that little secret today?
Yeah, okay. So Chris was married at the time to not to his wife now, very nice lady, and we were in Joseph's, and I was sitting with them, and I'm just a dude from Montana. I don't know anybody, and I know now, which I didn't know back then, is that a lot of stars don't actually like to get all glammed up and be seen, right? This is before Instagram. This is 25 years ago. And we're hanging out and we're at Joseph's and this lady sits down next to us and we get some drinks. I'm like, great, we got some drinks. And Gabby goes, hey, you should try this drink and passes it around. And she goes, do you want to try it? And I'm like, I'm going to pass. I don't take drinks from homeless people, but I'm good. And Chris kicks me under the table, and he's a running back, so it hurt. He's got strong legs, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't. I'm glad you guys are so nice to everybody. I'm just not that nice." And he's like, "That's Scarlett Johansson," and I was just like, "Oh." And she just didn't want to be noticed, so she was just like had a hoodie with the head over, and her hair was just down on her face, and she had no makeup on, and she's got that slightly twisted tooth, which is really cute in the movies and all the things, and then if you see someone in person, just like anybody, right? If they decide they want to go shabby chic and they don't want anyone to know who they are, they can do it. And she hit a home run, and I embarrassed myself completely and embarrassed Chris and his wife at the time. So it was not my most shining moment, but it also shows that I just don't know who people are. I don't know who they are. I probably should. I definitely, there was, but there also wasn't an Instagram. It was MySpace, I think, was the thing, and I didn't care about that. So yeah, I got caught not knowing who someone was and accidentally calling them homeless. Big win for me.
Authenticity. I love that story. Thank you.
I love it. I love it.
So, Marcus, we are going to transition to you. You came into my life when the boxes had already been a part of my world for 15 years. And wow, I just realized we've been together for half the time that my mom has been gone. Time is such a crazy thing. Like Erin with Jason, this was one of the very first stories I ever shared with you about our family history, losing our mom so early in my life, especially in Erin's life, and what she did before she died to make sure she would still be a part of our lives. But before we dive into that, I want to take a moment to introduce you to our listeners because you're so much more than just my husband. For over 20 years, you've worked as a life and business coach, guiding thousands of people through some of the most defining and complex moments of their lives, navigating love, loss, personal growth, and building a life of intention.
And in so many ways, this is deeply personal for you too. You've not only walked this journey yourself, but you've also worked with each of us, me, Jason, and Kellie, to help us become better versions of ourselves and to prepare for this project.
So before we talk about the boxes from your perspective, let's start there. What first led you down this path? What was the moment that made you realize this kind of work was your calling?
Well, I've been told it's a really good story because people have asked me over the years, how did you wind up being a life coach? And so it's a pretty simple story, but it's a pretty profound story, at least in the course of my life and what I've been able to do since this story took place. So my whole life, basically, I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know who and what I wanted to be. I remember being in middle school, elementary school, and you have to write these projects, right? Like, who do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up, etc. Other people like a doctor, a fireman, a football player, this, that, the other. I never could really come up with anything. And so at times I would think there was something wrong with me because I didn't seem to have a purpose like I thought everybody else did. I've since learned that's different being a coach because you get to hear a lot of things from people. But anyways, I eventually did a whole bunch of things in my life, from waiting tables to construction work. I worked in a restaurant, cleaned. It was like a resort on a lake in northern Idaho. So I would take care of the cabins and the tents. And I was a bartender and I was a cook and I was a dishwasher. I did all kinds of things there. I had a number of different things, even delivered pizza, etc. But I eventually wound up investing a private pool of money. And so there I would sit, reading the Wall Street Journal back in the day. This was in the early to mid 90s. And at home, I'd have a couple computer screens up in front of me and I'm watching the market, etc. I'm running this private money and I was good at what I did. But one day I just came to terms with my disenchantment with it. I was not fulfilled by watching computer screens and making money. That did not make me happy. And so in all honesty, I just sat back and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I turned it off. I shut it down and gave the money back. And I sat back in my chair that same day and said to myself, well, Marcus, what do you actually want to do with your life now? And the answer was very clear. It came to me just crystal clear, like I'm talking to you right now. I want to be a professional whitewater raft guide. I had been a private rafter for 10 years in Western Colorado and Eastern Utah. And I just really thought it would be fun to be a professional whitewater raft guide. So I looked into it here where I live in Grand Junction, Colorado, came across a really great company. I'm so glad I found this rafting company to be a part of, Adventure Bound with Tom Kleinschnitz here in Grand Junction. Went in, had an interview. So my interview was, I'm sitting at the end of this long table with all these seasoned guides around me and the owner, and they're grilling me about being a guide and what it means to be a guide, etc. I answered it the very best way I could. The owner of the organization, Tom, he said, we don't typically hire people who've been private guides or have done private rafting because they believe that they know how to raft. And we have a system here that we do, and they don't want to learn. They're not open to doing it differently. And he said, I tried it once and it didn't work. And I just looked at him and nodded my head. And he said, but there's something different about you. And I want to give you a shot. If you can come in here and you can put down everything you know, learn what we know, learn our way, I'll bring you in and let's see what happens. And I was going to do that anyways. So I agreed. And anyways, I got hired, bottom of the rung. I was an apprentice guide. I think my salary was $900 or $1,000 for an entire month plus tips. That's what I made starting. So imagine coming off of a lucrative career to going down, but it was an awesome move. I loved it. I was became a lead guide at the end of that first year and did 4 years of rafting with Adventure Bound. My fourth season, about midsummer, I was starting to think, well, Marcus, what else would you like to do with your life? What's next? Because I just really was feeling the urge to move on to something more. I'd enjoyed rafting the rivers, meeting people, showing them nature, explaining geology to them, etc. But I was looking for something else. And so this wonderful woman named Peggy Pillmore, who I still know to this day, friend of mine to this day, she showed up on my last trip of my fourth season down the gates of Lodore, which is in Colorado and goes into Utah. Now, normally when you're a raft guide, there's multiple rafts in the trip. I think there were 5 or 6 on this particular trip. And normally when you're a raft guide, people will move around. The clients will move around to different boats to have different experiences. On this particular trip, nobody got on my boat ever, except for Peggy. And when we would do hikes and stuff, we'd hike together and we would talk. When we would sit around the fire after dinner, we would talk, her and I. And so anyways, we got off the river. We're packing up our gear. She was about to hop in a van and head back to Salt Lake City. She gave me a big hug and she whispered in my ear, why aren't you helping people? And it's emotional because that was like Genesis. That's where the light turned on for me for the first time in my life. At the age of 36, I knew what my purpose was. Pretty big deal because in that moment, it all came together. I've been helping people my whole life, whether it's standing between the girl with cancer, Martina, in my neighborhood, and John Rizzu, the big bully that picked on all of us. And I was not a big person myself, or going down the hallway in 4th grade, 3 times a week to work with the developmentally disabled children, rescuing birds. I mean, I've always wanted to help life, and I've always wanted to help life be the best it could be, for it to be great, if you will. And so when she said that to me, all of that collided and I knew what I needed to do. I'd already been looking into life coaching. I got off the river, did what I needed to do, incorporated, and here I am over 20 years later. That was in September 4th of 2004 that I did that. And here I am all these years later. I still love what I do, still know Peggy Pillmore. In fact, she painted a picture for me called Paddle Man, which was a picture that she has that she said, this is how I saw you. And all it is a human being made out of a paddle for a head. The arms are paddles and no real facial expression. It's not man or woman. It's just neutral with this beautiful multicolored mountain range in the background. And that became my logo for my company, Life is Great Coaching and Consulting.
That's so incredible, Marcus. I actually didn't know several aspects of that story. So I learned some new things about you today, and I love that. And I had no idea that that's where that logo came from. And I love Paddle Man. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. That's really a beautiful journey that you've been on.
Marcus, I think guide is such a perfect description of you as it applies to all areas of your life. And I have the privilege of getting to see that aspect of you every single day. And hearing your story reminds me just how much the work you do is woven into everyday life and into the experiences that shape us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And can I interrupt really quick?
Of course.
Thank you. I just want to say also, from knowing Marcus, getting the chance to spend the weekend with you guys and exchange some calls with him, I mean, it was just the other night, Erin and I were walking around, we were talking about our lives, and we had a call. Like I asked you for a call, and I was like, I really like Marcus. I wanted to be my friend, but I'm a 50-year-old man. I don't know how to ask, 'cause there's no playground. There's no whitewater rafting playground for us. And she goes, you should text him or call him. And I was like, can I do that? I mean, like, and she goes, I think you can. I think he's open to it. And I was like, well, I'm going to try. I'm gonna put forth an effort and try. But it is that thing that is Marcus, that it's not only do you want to learn from him, because you do, because he just presents wisdom in such a beautiful way, but you also want to be close to him. Like you want to be friends, and not for the knowledge, but for the heart, for just the way you know how he's going to care and respect and honor that friendship. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And to be able to see it firsthand and then to, feel like a nervous first grader in a small town where you don't know anybody and you're like hands in the pocket, you mean my buddy? It's a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
I can relate. I moved around a lot as a child too, so I found myself on a new playground in a new school roughly every 2 years. So I know how challenging that can be, and at the same time, I think it helped to create who we are as men in the stage of our life because we had to adapt to those new situations and things like that. And gosh, you guys are making me blush over here. I feel loved, and it's a wonderful thing. I love you guys too.
Well, you are loved indeed. Marcus, you've had a front row seat to this part of Kellie's journey for over 15 years now. You've seen how the boxes have played a role in her life long before this became something bigger. What has it been like for you to witness that?
Well, like Kellie said at the beginning, I knew about the boxes early on in our career. That was something that she shared with me because Kellie's always been very powerfully connected to her mother and to you and to her life. And so these were things that she shared with me. And I was, from the very beginning, I was, impressed by the fact that your mother had such foresight to think ahead. In fact, I imagine that your mom sat there and maybe even walked herself through what she thought that experience might have been like had she actually been there and seeing herself give you these different gifts and the hugs and the things that were said and the tears that were shed. It's almost like it seems like your mom, knowing her the way I do through you guys, particularly Kellie, that's something that she would have done. And, that's an impressive thing to witness and to think about. And just like Jason said, it makes me think if anything ever happens to me unexpectedly or prematurely, I guess is the word I would use, I want to have that foresight too. I want to think of those things too. I want to leave behind something intentional too. And even if something doesn't take me prematurely, I want to leave something at the end. Your mother has already inspired me in my life.
God, that's so beautiful. Thank you. And now that, this story is out in the open and growing into something, bigger, what is it about this legacy story? And this is going to piggyback off of what you just said, but what is it about this legacy story that has impacted you the most?
I'm in line with Jason on this. It's the coming together of you two. I have my own sister, and for our own reasons, we are not close at this stage of our life, and we were once best friends. So I look at this and I just see this wonderful rekindling of this really wonderful opportunity that you guys have in this lifetime to be sisters, to love each other, to work together, to understand each other, to build memories, to share life and family, and to see you guys so easily, so seamlessly, so gracefully reconnect, share, love. Kellie sits with me on the couch in the evenings, just like you do with Jason. Look what I found today. She'll bring out all these pictures. Look what I found. And this was happening then, and this was happening there. And telling stories and telling memories that she has about all of that, seeing her light up at what she found, what memories flowed back to her, and just how happy she is on a daily basis with you back in her life in a meaningful way. To me, that is by far and away the number one standout thing that I have witnessed through this experience.
The coming back together for Erin and I, and we shared in the first episode, it's not like we ever lost touch with each other or were super mad at each other or had some crazy falling out. I had shared that it felt to me like it was more like life took over instead of love being at the forefront. And so to know that you both have seen firsthand what we have experienced personally and that it's touched you that deeply means a lot to both of us. But we also want that to be an inspiration for others. So, Marcus, based on the experience that you've had with us, the work you do with others, how do you believe this story can help others reconnect in ways that maybe they don't realize they're capable of doing?
Well, I think it really illustrates the power of love, communication, and a desire to have a fuller, more fulfilling experience in life, honestly. I think that anybody who really follows what you guys are going to do in all the things, ways that this is going to be told, this story, I hope that they pull out the value in reevaluating where you might be at with somebody in your life at a given time and being open, being willing to open that door and peek in at a greater possibility, a greater reality. If you were to put your ego aside for a moment, if you were to put the water under the bridge aside for a moment, if you're willing to put what other people have told you should or shouldn't do aside for a moment, and just really embraced the potential, the opportunity, the beauty, the love, the magic, the joy, the happiness, all of the wonderful things that we can get to experience as human beings. I really hope that people are able to pull that away from this and do their own work with their own family and their own family members in order to have the very best experience and memories that they can have by the time this curtain draws to a close on them, just like it's going to draw to a close on us one day.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We know that there are so many people listening to this podcast who have broken relationships. And there are many who desire to bring those relationships closer. So that perspective, I think, is impactful. I think it has a lot of meaning. And I really believe that there is hope for others based on our own personal experience. And we thank both of you for supporting us every single step of the way. And when we come back, we want to take a deep dive into your personal and professional journeys. So we'll be back in just a moment. Now that we've heard from each of you about the boxes and our journey as sisters and how this project has unfolded, its impact from your perspective, let's rewind just a little bit. We, of course, know both of you intimately as our partners, our best friends, and the people we do life with every single day.
We know about your journeys, the ups, the downs, the defining moments. We know about the incredible fathers you both are and the amazing work you've done and continue to do. But many, probably most of our listeners don't know your full stories yet. So let's start there.
Jason, it's been so fun getting to know you as your relationship with Erin has unfolded over the past year. You've had some profound personal and professional experiences, and you have one incredible daughter, Harper. Can you share a little bit about your personal story, your family, your career, and the life experiences that have shaped you into who you are today?
I'm sorry, how long is this podcast?
As long as we make it.
That's what I'm talking about. No, I think like anything, right? It's about perspective and it's about how you want to see things or how you grew up. And I remember growing up as a kid and not knowing my real dad and not having a relationship with him. But I loved television. And there used to be a show on HBO called Dream On. And this kid was raised kind of in front of the TV. Like the parents just set him down in front of the TV. And that started the whole show. And that was kind of my life. Like I remember kids being like, yeah, I watch 5 hours of television a week. And I was like, a day? That's it? And they're like, no, the week. And I was like, oh, that's a horrible ratio. I mean, I was telling Erin about all the TV shows that I like to watch as a kid, and she goes, oh, I like to watch these. I'm like, I watch those too. And she's like, wait a second, did you go to school? Like, did you, where were your parents? So my perspective is a little bit different, but I don't knock it. I look at it and go, well, my parents just did what they thought they were doing was best. But I imagined my real dad as Chevy Chase, and because there was the balance of like if you think about Christmas vacation or European vacation or even just vacation in general, right? You have the funny moments, you have the stressed out moments, you have him freaking out and blowing up and yelling and throwing a tantrum. And those were all those things, but instead of it being negative, it was positive because it was Chevy Chase. And I did the same thing with my first stepdad, Lee. I looked at him and I was like, oh, he's Charles Bronson. Yeah, he was tough and he was mean and he'd kind of knock you around. But if you looked at him like the movie character, it was a lot easier. And he loved Charles Bronson, so I could watch a Charles Bronson movie with him. So it was different growing up. My mom was a little ride of the sheriff of Nottingham, and she was extremely religious. And there were moments in my life where I was on that same train, pastoral ministries major in college at an Assembly of God church. I mean, that's with the bad tamburining, the weird triangles, and the speaking in tongues. Not one person has rhythm, but they all want to sing. That's an AG church, right? It's just Gosh, I wish you could see Marcus laughing right now. But yeah, so I was a pastoral ministries major in college. I've been really blessed to do a lot. I did not fulfill that career. I ended up going into communications and communication theory and rhetorical analysis, understanding what people say and the methodologies behind how they say them makes it easier to manipulate them. You speak in their same rhythm, you use their same verbiage, you follow along in the way that they tell stories, so you tell stories the same way so that they accept your stories easier and better across the board. Learned those comp theory places, and then I was just like Marcus, I was kind of lost. I really was. My first job out of college, I worked at a Hertz rental car, just renting cars, and I was a manager in Huntington Beach, and it was super cool for me. And I got a car to drive home, and it was really wild. And then I got a call from a friend, and there was a brewery in Whitefish, Montana that was hiring, and I quit, and I worked at a brewery, and sold beer. And I hated sales and I was not good at it. And I lasted about a year and I left that and somehow stumbled into teaching at university, teaching comm theories and doing speech and debate. And that didn't pan out very well. I was just too young and just didn't know how to teach, knew things, but just didn't know how to express them. And I just stumbled. I worked in PR and I was good at it, but I didn't know why. And I was good at it for the wrong reasons. Like I like the media hit. I didn't care about the strategy. I didn't care about the direction. I didn't understand how things worked. I just knew that if you gave me a topic, I could put you on the news. And that was valuable, but it's only valuable when you're needed in that moment. And then when you're not needed in that moment, you're gone. And it really reflected my life and how I engage with people. If I didn't find myself as a value to them in that moment, I just didn't engage with them. And so it separated me from a lot of things. And I'd done that a lot in my life, but it reflected best professionally as a mirror. And I traveled around a lot. I bounced around a lot. I had relations with my mom. I didn't. Relations with my dad. Then I didn't. Relations with family sometimes, but a lot I didn't. And I was just kind of this lone wolf. And I remember, I look back now and I'm just like, well, what did you expect from people? Like my buddy and I were goofing around one day and we created a way to spoof caller ID mobile to mobile. And we thought it was hilarious. And I would get free drinks at bars. I mean, I would sit next to a guy like Marcus and I'd go, I bet you if you give me your phone number, I will dial it on my phone right now. And I had a sidekick. This is how long ago it was. One of those big bricks that people were just like, I can't believe how cool this is. And now it's a Mac, it's a laptop. And you'd flip the screen out and they'd be like, my number's this. And I go, all right, I'm going to call you from my phone. And 1974 is going to pop up on your screen. And they're like, impossible. I'm like, oh, here you go. Or your mom's phone number is going to pop up on the screen. Impossible. And it would, and I'd get a free drink. And we put it on the news, and criminals who were using this technology didn't find it funny. And they didn't like that we had kind of told the world that caller ID doesn't work.
I bet they
I got a lot
didn't.
of death threats. My death threats made the front page of a lot of papers all around the world, about 300 papers total. And I remember being hurt that no family members called me. Now, mind you, I'm not talking to any of them, right? I'm not engaging with any of these people, but yet my feelings are still hurt. I'm like, no one's called. Well, one, I mean, you could, I guess, Google my number. It's still, but I was hurt by it. But then I reflect back now, I'm like, but I wasn't engaging. I wasn't talking to them, and I'll bounce around a little bit here, but you fast forward to the story I just shared about Marcus, that's an impetus from Erin of me breaking out of these cycles of waiting that I can be value enough, right? And working on that and trying to figure that out, and as you do those things, and now you have kids, and we all have kids, mine's super young, but it changes then also how you speak and how you address these things because now I'm not addressing them for just me. Now I'm addressing them hoping that Harper doesn't fall into the same patterns that I have because she's so much like me and I don't want her to be in a lot of ways, right? I don't want her to fall in those traps. I don't want her to have those same issues and same problems. So one, I have to learn from them. And, Marcus and working with him over the weekend helped me immensely. And being with Erin has helped me immensely. And my friend Brooks Bear, who's a mentor, he's helped me immensely. I mean, that dude has called me out more times. I turned 30. I'm at a dinner with my mom, my grandmother's sister, and him and his wife. And everyone's like, go around the table and let's say what's nice about Jason. And we get to Brooks and he looks at me and shakes his head. And I'm like, oh, great. Here comes the truck. And he goes, Jason's like a Fabergé egg. He's beautiful and he will present himself that way. But there's a case and you don't get in the case and he'll never let you see inside the egg. And it breaks my heart every day. And it took 10 years for that to sink in. It took the birth of my daughter for that to sink in, of the impact of that, the weight of that, and what that meant for how I had relationships, how I had handled them, and also then how I was going to handle my relationship with my daughter and what that was going to look like and how I was going to change or try to change my relationships as an adult and how I was going to be with them. I mean, to this day, like I had my buddy Trey text me and he's like, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in months." And I was like, "Well, I know you're busy, I'm busy, and I didn't want to bother you." And I didn't have anything to talk to him about. Not like we just couldn't sit down and talk, but I just, he's busy and I'm busy. Well, Trey didn't care. He just wanted to sit down and have a beer with me. He didn't care that we had something to talk about. And Erin was telling me that, and she reminds me of that. So, a very roundabout way, to say that I had a different childhood. There were pros and cons to it. I created a lot of scenarios in my head to make it easier and to not deal with things. And in doing that, I ended up not dealing with a lot of things as an adult. And it dramatically impacted my relationships across the board and how I don't engage and talk with people, and why I don't. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because I think I'm bothering them sometimes. And, through therapy and through talking with Brooks and through talking with Marcus and being with Erin and being reminded that it's okay just to be yourself and just have a conversation has been a very beautiful thing. And it's still something I work with to this day, obviously. But, as a father, I want to work on it for me, but also for my daughter, and for the people around me, because I do want them to know that I care. I do want them to know that I love them and they can call me anytime because I tell people that all the time. Call me anytime, I will help. And I will, but sometimes they just want to call the talk. And I don't know how to do that a lot of times.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Hearing you reflect on your journey, there's so much depth in the experiences that have shaped who you are today. And I'm very grateful that I get a front row seat to your life today and to watching that unfold and to watch some of these transformations happen right before me. And it's a gift and it's a privilege. Looking back, what do you think have been the biggest defining moments or lessons in your life?
You know, I would say some of the big ones for me, if I go back when I was a kid, a defining moment was, and I remember sharing this with you, and this is not, I say this not as a knock on my real dad at the time, but just as like this is a defining moment for me. And I shared it with Erin. We pulled out a box, as she was getting ready to go through some of her stuff. I have some boxes of mine in Harper's room. She goes, "Dad, you should pull your stuff out." I'm like, "I don't know what's in these boxes. Like, maybe we shouldn't." And there's a Letterman's jacket in there, but there was this note, and it was a drawing, and it was two bunnies and an egg, and there was two bunnies and then a little bunny, and then the bunnies went in different directions. And it was how my dad explained to me that it was divorce and that he was a bunny just going somewhere else, and he moved to Portland. And it was a defining moment for me because I realized that I just wasn't going to see him anymore. And he was gone. And I remember when I got divorced, he asked me, "Where are you moving? Take a job in New York and take that job in Saudi Arabia. What are you going to do?" I was like, I'm living as close to my kid as I can without making it uncomfortable for the two people getting divorced, right? But that was a very defining moment. My grandmother being in my life was a continual defining moment. Amazing woman. I mean, just her and my great grandpa, Grandpa George, everyone in Townsend always said he was the greatest guy in the world. He never said a bad thing to say about anybody. And Kathleen was the same way, my grandmother. And she would just, I mean, she taught me how to play solitaire, which might not be a big deal to some people, but I spent a lot of time alone and I learned how to play a card game. I could play it by myself. She introduced me to the Lone Ranger. She introduced me to the Andy Griffith Show. And I got to watch him with her. And she liked to watch football, and she made the best mac and cheese. And I got to learn how to cook from her. And it was such a beautiful thing. And she was so impactful to my life. I mean, she introduced me to maple bars. She made the best hot cocoa. And I was the first kid where there was divorce, right? And so it was interesting because I mean I could do no there was a time where I could just do no wrong. Like I would have burnt the house down. She'd have been slapping my grandfather, being like, I can't believe you didn't bring the marshmallows. Look at the great fire Jason made. So, what's going on? And she impacted me throughout my life, held me accountable, was absolutely amazing. High school was big. There's a friend of mine, Nick Sheedy, who fundamentally changed my future without a doubt. It was in March in Big Fork, Montana, our senior year, and it was the Western Montana speech and debate finals, and they were one person short and couldn't compete. And he called me up at like 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I'm a senior in high school. I'm sleeping until like 2 in the afternoon. And the phone's ringing and ringing and ringing. I go, what? Finally answer, and it's like, hey, buddy, it's Nick. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill you. He goes, we're one person short. We need a body. Can you just show up to the speech and debate tournament? And I said, sure. I go, what do I have to do? And he gave me two things, impromptu and something else. And I won both. So then I went to Montana State and I won both. And then I went, the Western finals and did well to enough where I got speech and debate scholarships to go to college. And I didn't have the grades. Like I wasn't a good student. I didn't do math well. But it changed everything for me because there was interest all of a sudden. And it propelled me to go to school. And in school, I met a gentleman named Tom Carmody, who was the professor of communications at Vanguard University. And he just took me under his wing. And a kid who didn't write that well, but could speak okay, brought me on speech and debate. And I mean, we'd go against Stanford and, we'd go against Pepperdine and we'd win. We'd kick their butts. And it was so cool. I mean, Erin knows we had, when she met my friend Brett from college, and he's like, "Oh, Jay, it was so much fun. Like, I went to speech and debate events because I'd watch him beat up on kids from Stanford and Pepperdine. They thought they were so smart, and I would drive myself because I didn't know how to engage with the other speech kids. But it was an impactful moment, and Tom's generosity in investing in me was a great thing. And professionally, I look at the time I spent with Anthony Shea at Home Loan Center. I learned a lot about work. I learned a lot about what business was. I learned a lot about what to ask for because I saw when I didn't ask for it, how much I didn't get paid. And then, my life just started to accelerate past that. And I've had some big dips, some big losses. But I've always known because I've tasted success that I can get it again. And emotionally, and I would say personally, I didn't have a lot of those big wins. I think about, I look back and hearing this, I'm like, it's education. It's education. It's a win. There wasn't a lot of personal because I didn't let people get close, and I just didn't want them to because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know how to act. I knew how to be who you wanted me to be in the moment, but I didn't really know who I was. And that really didn't happen, until Harper was born. And I really started to take who I was and how I was around people a lot more seriously because she was watching me and she really was watching me. And I can see it to this day. And, so can Erin. There's sometimes where Harper says something and Erin will bump me and be like, that's not her, bud. That's you. You kick yourself in the butt first and then have a conversation with her. So my professional journey has gone well. my ability to recall and thank the people that have invested time in me is I love, but growth as a person probably really started about 10 years ago.
I really appreciate so much of what you shared, Jason, specifically the variety of loss that you have experienced personally and professionally, what that has taught you, the lessons that you've gained through that journey. And I love that you reflected on your relationship with your daughter, because when you talk about being a father, it's clear how much being Harper's dad means to you. What has your role as a dad taught you about love and legacy?
I mean, on the love part, it's taught me how hard love is. Love, it's I remember I was doing this interview with this young country western gal named Olivia Harms. And I think her movie was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or 10 Dates, whatever that Matthew McConaughey film is. And at the end, I asked her the question, I said, how much do these movies mess you up? And she goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, you're a single lady, you're looking for love. I go, but how much do these mess you up? Because it's you find love, you like the guy, but if there's not some huge explosive fight, and then someone doesn't run across a bridge through traffic and slide across the hood of a car to stop you from going to the airport to profess their love, like if that doesn't happen, then have you truly found love? And she paused and she goes, man, I never thought of it that way. And I bring that up because I was in a household where it was yelling and throwing things, and it was angry and violent, and it was tense. And Erin knows sometimes I'm like that. And that just rears its ugly head. But being a father, I didn't want that. You know, I I want my kid to know peace. I want her to know structure. I want her to know that what I say is what I mean, and there's wins and losses for us, but I'll always be here. And some of that has come through and something that I started as soon as she could start talking, just kind of put together sentences. I would ask her, how am I doing? And I still do to this day. I go, how am I doing as a dad? And sometimes it's I can't believe you make me eat my piece. And I'm like, well, that's the shits, kid. Everyone's got to eat their piece. That's the way it is. But one time she had told me, I think she was 5, said, Dad, and I work from home. And she goes, Dad, I don't like it when you yell at people. It scares me. And I said, okay, I'll work on that. I'm not perfect, but I'll work on it. And probably a month or two later, we're walking down South Congress. She's holding my hand and she gives it a kiss. And I said, oh, honey, what's that for? And she goes, I haven't heard you yell in a long time. Thank you, Daddy. And it was one of those moments where you really understand they're listening. And they aren't just absorbing what you're telling them. They're absorbing who you are. They're absorbing how you react and engage. And there was other stories where I can shake my head and put my head down and be like, man, I can't believe that. Right? Like that's me. And I'm embarrassed, sitting in the line in Chick-fil-A, sitting in the back seat, in a car seat. Fuck, hurry up. Let's go, people. We got places to be. And that wasn't me. Right? As you go, oh man, like what am I saying around my kid? And you get so flippant in language because you get so comfortable in being the adult. And to create a moment and an opportunity where we could engage and really have conversation to where she can share things with me and feel comfortable. And I get to let her know, right? God gave us 2 eyes, 2 ears, and one mouth. Do you want the alligator or do you want the bunny? Because the alligator is going to give you advice and it's going to be strong and it's going to chomp down and it's going to go after it. The bunny's got a small mouth. I'm gonna be quiet. I'm just gonna listen and I'm gonna show you my sad eyes and my love. And I'm gonna give you all the hugs in the world and whatever I can do. And I need to know who you want because if you don't, I'm gonna make the decision and it's probably gonna be the wrong one, right? But being a dad's been one of the greatest pleasures of my life, if not the greatest pleasure. And watching her grow up and turn into a young woman and communicate with me in such different ways. I mean, there was one time we're walking to get coffee. I'll end this on a lighter note here. We're walking to get coffee, holding hands. There's a coffee shop about a quarter of a mile away, and she's like 4 years old. Little legs are next to me, and we're cruising along. And she goes, Dad, that's the asphalt. And I go, that's the road. We call it asphalt. Yep, it's the road. She goes, where's all the semen? I'm like, I'm sorry, what? She goes, the semen. I'm like, is are you and your mom like watching like Dateline or 48 Hours at night when I'm it's like, what are you talking about? She goes, the semen, it's everywhere, isn't it? I'm like, I don't know that I understand what you're saying. And she goes, the stuff you walk on the sidewalk. I go, cement? The cement? It's all around us. It's just dirty here. We don't need to talk for a minute. Dad needs a moment to reflect, right? Let's work on our
That's
pronunciation.
great.
Yeah, so it's I'm blessed. I say it all the time and I mean it all the time. I'm a blessed man. I'm blessed to have my daughter and the relationship I have with her. I'm blessed to have my relationship with Erin and the way she's inspired me to engage and be a better friend to my friends, to be more present. I'm blessed to have you both in my life, Kellie and Marcus. I'm abundantly blessed. Everybody's got hiccups. Everyone has a bad past, and it's about perspective and it's about relatively where you sit in the world. You don't judge the person who lost or wrecked their Lamborghini and it's the worst day of their life because that is the worst day of their life, right? And my worst day is my worst day, but it's mine. And it has helped me be the person I am today because I chose to make it be that way. And I just hope my daughter can get to these places faster than at 40 years of age.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for sharing all of that. Harper is a special little girl, and she is just as blessed to have you as her dad. So, Marcus, now it's your turn. You and Kellie
Good
have
luck,
been
Marcus.
Thank you, Jason.
You and Kellie have been together for 15 years, which means you've navigated so much life together, so much that I'm not sure we're actually going to even really scratch the surface today. But before we dive in, let's go back a little bit further. And will you tell us about your own journey, where you're from, your background, your career, which you touched on earlier, but more specifically, the moments that have shaped you into the person you are today?
You bet. Happy to. My life started in Los Angeles, California. I was born in Cedars-Sinai Hospital, same place Elvis Presley's daughter was born. And we lived there. My dad he had graduated college, and him and my mom had met already, gotten married, and he was moving up through the ranks of the social services division. He actually helped, abuse children in really bad situations. And I think I was about, if I remember correctly, I was about a year and a half, 2 years old. He'd come home from work and I'd be sitting on the front grass and my eyes would be watering because of the smog that was in the air from Los Angeles at that time. And the doctor basically said, your son's lungs are being destroyed. You need to get him to a place where there's better air. So my father and my mother decided they were going to move to Oregon. My dad gave up a very promising career where he was rising very high, very quickly in the ranks of Child Protective Services in Los Angeles County. And we wound up going to a place called Sweet Home, Oregon. Very, very small place to this very, very day. He took about a 60% cut in pay, if not more. And we were in the middle of nowhere to save my lungs. And I'm always grateful for that forever. He made it quite a sacrifice, him and my mom both, in order to get me okay. As time went on, lived in Oregon for 13 years, wound up moving up to Central Oregon, up outside of Portland, Lake Oswego, and Tigard, Oregon. Went to a wonderful middle school there called Fowler Junior High. It was a state-of-the-art school at the time, and that's where I met my best friend, Mike Lawton, and I'm still friends with to this very day, more brother than a friend. And, went through a lot of different things up there. My dad eventually moved out of Child Protective Services and got into real estate, taught himself. He went to night school in college while I was a kid, and taught himself how to buy and sell real estate and got really good at it, as a matter of fact. And we started to really move up. I remember getting things like Nike tennis shoes, painter pants, and all the cool stuff that were really in those days, because we had the money to do it finally, as opposed to wearing Levi's or what was it, those Sears Toughskin jeans that I grew up on when I was elementary school because we didn't have a lot of money. So that was going really well. Life was great. And then my father got Crohn's, which is a very serious disease. And he almost died 5 times in the first year that he had it. So life changed dramatically. It was also the time when the 80s came along, early 80s, massive inflation. The interest rate, we think it's high today at 7%. It was around 21, 22% back then, shut the real estate and building market down, crippled us, wound up declaring bankruptcy, and we had to leave Tigard, Oregon, the one place we've been at for the most time in our lives, where we've made the most friends and connections, and moved back to California with nothing to live with my mother's parents, Doug and Shirley Gilbert. And we started over again. Wound up going to a big giant high school there, 3,000 students. They had security guards. I mean, my goodness, it was such a massive place compared to where I came from. Wound up graduating high school there, and eventually, through some ups and downs and trials and tribulations, made my way to college. I wanted to take some time off after high school. I wasn't really into school anymore. Made my way back to college and really got into something called sociology, which I thought was fascinating. Met a man named Rod Godin, who was in the military during the Vietnam War, and Air America, which used to fly drugs back to America. It was a CIA operation, used to fly drugs back to America. They would then send money and ammunition and weapons back to Southeast Asia in order to fight the war. And he told me about this. He introduced me to something called elite deviance, and how people aren't always nice and trusting as you think they are, which is something I needed to learn early because I've always been very trusting and optimistic. So I learned and I was fascinated. So I'd go and sit with office with him and talk with him. And eventually I moved to Northern California, a place called Paradise, California, up in the foothills, where there was a fire several years ago that wiped it out. What a great little town. Finished up my school there, came out to visit my parents in Grand Junction, Colorado for a spring break. Loved it. Finished the semester, put everything I owned into a little U-Haul trailer, which I cannot do today, and made my way out here with my sister in order to go to school here in Grand Junction at Mesa State University. From there, I finished school, and I didn't really want a job. I wasn't looking for a job. In fact, I changed directions. I remember sitting in the airport in Grand Junction with my father and his father, Eddie. They were both called Eddie. And my dad looks at me and says, "Well, how'd your grades turn out this semester?" And I'm sitting there with my dad on one side, my grandfather on the other. And I said, "Well, I got a couple of A's, a couple of D's, and a couple of F's and a C." And he said, "Tell me what happened." And I said, "Well, I don't want to be a sociology professor anymore. I don't think it's going to fit what I want to do in my life." And I decided to quit going to a couple of classes mid-semester. He looked at me, put his hand on my knee, and he said, "I think it's the best idea you ever made. What are you going to do now?" And so I basically just dove back in and I started studying theology, psychology, political science, philosophy, history, the human sciences, because I wanted to understand, how did we get here? Throughout the course of history, what decisions did we make? How did they turn out? How did we get here? What can we learn from that? And how can we make better decisions going forward as a race, as a planet, in order to have better outcomes, better experiences? That's what I did. So I got out of college and I started traveling. I just jumped in my truck. I headed to Arizona and would spend time out in the middle of nowhere, walking around with bighorn sheep in the wilderness outside of a couple of places in Arizona, just walking around, writing, learning, listening, being with animals, reading, meeting people. And I did that for a while, a couple of years, coming back home in here and there, doing different things. Eventually wound up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is where Kellie and I got married in 2018, which was that was a life-changing moment, by the way. And like I said, I came back from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to help my mother take care of my father and got into investing. You guys heard the story about becoming a life coach, etc. I had a daughter in 2001. Her name is Savannah Grace. Another one of the most profound things that ever happened to me in my life, to look at her, hold her for the first time. I've been doing coaching and consulting for a long time. I've been privileged to meet your sister and marry her and to help raise her two glorious, wonderful children as well. Now we have a granddaughter. She's 16 months old. Her name is Rain Grace. And she is just an amazing human being that has taught us so much in her 16 months on this planet. It's not even funny. And for all of you who've never been a grandparent, it is amazing. I can't wait for you to have the experience if you're going to, because it's delicious. And, here I sit today in a wonderful life filled with wonderful people. My clients are amazing. My family's amazing that I have, and my friends are amazing that I have. I was just sitting and laying in bed 2 days ago in the morning. Kellie was still asleep. And I just was laying there thinking about everything I'm grateful for. And when you're grateful, you can feel that. It changes the cellular aspect of you as a human being. It changes the energetic aspect. And it's just so wonderful to be grateful and to have things to be grateful for that are so readily accessible. So many ways to count one's blessing on a daily basis. It's a wonderful life. And if somebody was to say, "Marcus, is it fun being you? Is life great for you?" I would say, I'm a real human being. I have real challenges. But in the end, life is great because I choose to make it so. And when I don't, I pay the price.
Well, I can attest to all of that firsthand. I will say unequivocally, becoming a grandparent with you and being Rain's Kiki and Papa have been hands down the greatest experience of our life. I can't wait, Erin and Jason, for you to have this experience of welcoming the next generation of your children into the world. There are no words to describe how powerful and moving it is. And I have a fun little story to interject here. So when Savannah was pregnant, everybody asks, what is your grandparent name going to be? And Marcus knew unequivocally that he was going to be Papa. That was what his dad was. And so he was stepping right into those amazing shoes. And I thought, my goodness, I don't know. I guess I'll be whatever she calls me. And then one night, it just hit me. My favorite name of all time, Erin, was what you called me before you could say Kellie, and that was Kiki.
Kiki.
And that was it. We were done. And so I've been Kiki ever since. Marcus, I've had the privilege of seeing your passion, your growth, your heart, your dedication to our family firsthand. We have navigated some really tough stuff, some of which we may explore in part 2 or future episodes. And you've taught me so much to help me expand my thinking, improve my life, and to be a better human being. Are there any specific lessons you've learned, maybe through your professional life and all the coaching work that you have done over the past 2 decades, that really stand out for you?
Yes. I don't think it's so much what I say, it's what I do. When a person walks into the room with me, I go into something called a flow state. The rest of the world ceases to exist. It doesn't matter what's going on. I'm very, very present. I listen with my ears. I listen with my eyes, what I see. I listen with what I feel. So I am literally like a dry sponge absorbing everything I can. And what that does is 2 things. Number one, the people feel that I work with feel safe and they feel heard. And I'm able to pull in information and nuances because of my level of attention and the flow that I'm in, that I can really, really help them. So I would say that through my professional life, it has been ground into me wholeheartedly that it's about being present. It's about listening. It's about hearing people, about being there for them in their moment, helping them to feel safe so they can come out, they can explore the nooks and crannies of themselves and their life, and really empowering them, giving them permission, if you will, to just do what it is they believe is in their best interest to do so that they can have the life that they really, really want to have. And to be able to move with them is another thing. Like today, I met with a gentleman going through a very difficult time. Short story, divorce, kids are involved, loss of job, can't find work in white collar America after 4 months of really trying. I mean, this man is really trying and he's feeling hopeless on a daily basis. His kids give him hope to get up every day and keep going, etc. And I come in to do coaching with him, ask him a couple of things, and I can tell right off the bat that something's different. So I ask him a couple of questions. He gives me the answer so I can get up to date. And then I just look at him and say, what do you want to talk about? And he goes in and he cries and he several times and tells me different things, asks me different things, shares different things. And in the end, the man walked out of the room in a much better place with a different perspective. And he's going to wake up tomorrow and he's going to try again with new heart, new strength, new courage, new valor inside of him, and new purpose and intention. And he's going to make it happen. And it's important to be able to pivot, to know when to step out of what you normally do and just be there for a person and hold them in that space in a profound way so that they can actually move through whatever obstacle or barrier that they have in front of them with your help and guidance.
Wow, that is so incredible, and so insightful. And I love that concept of pivoting, and how critically important that is in life, in all aspects of life.
And also, Erin, in loss, right?
Yes.
When we navigate these journeys of loss, whatever that loss may be, but having that ability to take a step back, take a deep breath, recognize how blessed you are, and figure out how you're going to pivot.
Absolutely. And, Marcus, I will say that I don't think anybody on the planet listens the way that you do. We can all learn from you in that regard. You are so intentional in your listening, and it's a gift.
Thank you.
And like Jason, you are also an incredible father, not just to Savannah, but also to Reese and Lily, Kellie's children, and of course, Papa to Rain. What has being a father and grandfather taught you about what truly matters? And when you look back at your own experiences, especially the ones that challenged you, what's a piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Good questions. Let me take the first one first about fatherhood. There's a lot to learn about being a parent, in my opinion. I didn't get a book. I watched my parents. I learned by default, like all of us. And I learned a lot along the way. Being present is so huge. Showing up is so huge. I think in all of the years that Kellie and I were together, have been together while we were raising kids, and even before I met Kellie, when I was raising Savannah with her mom, I think there was maybe one sporting event that I ever missed, ever. That was so critically important to me. And I hope that that lives in the heart of Savannah and Lily and Reese. We went to all of their stuff, rain, sleet, snow, hail. It didn't make any difference. We showed up. We were there. We loved them. We cared. We still remember. So being present, showing up for your kids, helping them through the tough times, learning through the challenging times so that you can be a better parent as you get older and really be a great grandparent when you eventually get there. I can remember a couple of times with Savannah in particular. She had a surgery that went bad on her right knee, and she got something called drop foot. So she played lacrosse, gymnastics, she danced. She was just an athlete, so confident, so powerful, so wonderful. And this happened just after she'd won her first team cheer competition. For the second year they tried, they won it, and then she had the surgery and she had drop foot. I remember being in the doctor's office with her, and what they do is they're trying to figure out where does the nerve die in the leg, and they stick this thing without any anesthesia or painkiller or anything. They literally stick this thing fatter than the fattest needle you've ever seen into a person's body along the nerve channel until they find out where they can't feel anymore. Holding my daughter against my chest so that I could whisper into her ear how much I loved her, respected her, cared about her, would always defend her, would always be there for her as she was going through this pain, and doing everything I could to absorb that in that moment so she didn't have to hurt. It's a mind-blowing experience, I will tell you right now. It humbles you. There's only so much you can do for your kids. There's only so much, but you got to do everything you can because it matters. I remember years later, 2018, she'd moved to the Front Range. Kellie and I were coming back from Colorado Springs. We get home. It wasn't very long afterwards, we hear that she was been in a head-on collision. Had to cut her out of this car. The fork for a fracture, 9 fractures in her face. And I have to gather myself up in a calm fashion that I can, get across the mountain so I can make it there, not get in trouble, not get hurt, not wreck. Thinking about it the whole way. I show up at the hospital. You stand at the foot of your child's bed. You look at her with the rest of the family sitting around. You know she's in bad shape. You know it's going to be a long journey. You're just grateful she's alive, that you get to see her again. And you stand at the foot of the bed and you know how much this is going to take. And you look at yourself and you say, I'm the right man for the job. Here we go. And you go. And you bring that child back to life. You bring her back to reality the best way you can to try to give her something of a semblance of a life that she once had. And you work to build on that every chance you get, even to this very day. So I have learned that being a father is about being present. It's about showing up. It's about communicating, being there through thick and thin, learning and growing, and more importantly than anything, loving endlessly.
That guy's my friend.
And you're mine.
Lucky.
Lucky all of us.
You want me to take the second question or?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So when I look back at my own experiences, especially the ones that have challenged me, what piece of advice would I give my younger self? Boy, that's a book. That's a book. In all honesty, I think the biggest thing I would probably take away from my life now and try to impart to my younger self is Time is fleeting. The things that you value are precious. They won't last forever, whether they're people or things or health or whatever it is. I would have liked to help myself understand the preciousness of this, the limited time, and how important all of this really is. That's what I would try to impart to myself.
Jason, I would love to ask you the same thing. You know, as you look back at all of your experiences, especially those that have challenged you, is there a piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple. You know, one would be it's if I could grab myself, and then I think there's a couple of key ages, right? If I could just take myself and say, hey, you know, it's okay to trust people, it's okay to talk to people, it's okay to you know, I guess I lived a lot of my life with the Joe Friday of it, right? Just the facts. Doesn't bother me. What do you want to know? Here you go. Like, oh, this here, you want a picture? Oh, I'm gonna tell you? Okay. But I left emotion out of it on purpose. One, I could make it funny. Two, I could just tell you. And then I did it in such a manner that it didn't give you recourse. It didn't give you an opportunity to really expand on it because it was just kind of there it is. It's like, were you speeding? Yes. I was doing 62 and a 45. Give me the ticket. Let's go. And if I could, you know, I would let myself know that that emotion matters and it's okay to have it. And it's okay to embrace it and it's okay to share it and it's okay to be scared. It's okay not to know and it's okay to cry. And it's okay to be vulnerable in all those moments, you know. And the other piece is in tune with what Marcus said, you know, and I tell people this a lot, you know, when I had my podcast, and I'd randomly email someone, and I think it was like 2.5 hours long sometimes. You know, and they would just spend all this time with me talking. Sometimes we would cry and, you know, just personal stories. But I always told them, I said, you know, we're gonna make and lose money. We just are. You love avocados, great. They're assholes, right? They're never ripe at the store. You finally get them home. As soon as you want them, they're rotted and you got to go buy some new ones. You're like, well, there's no taco salad tonight. It's over.
That's great.
But you can always go get some more. You can always go make some more money. You can't, there's no amount of money that brings you back time. So how do you want to spend it, right? How do you want to spend it? Because you can't buy time. It's gone. And whether it's things like this, where I'm just honored to be here, that I can't believe you know you all want to spend time talking, or professionally with people, or other things that I've done. I've taken a real purposeful effort, and I wish I would have just understood this younger, and I wish I could tell myself, right? Time. You don't get it back. So how do you want to use it? Because you know how you've wasted it, but how do you want to use it, right? What's the purpose of it? And I'm not saying you can't waste time and sit back and have a day in front of the television. That's fine. But when you're with people, when you're doing good things, when you're being intentional, it's time. Man, it's time. You don't get it back. It's gone. And it sucks that you have to wait till you're older to find out the value of time. You know, and it's such a silly thing, and everyone will say it, right? It's just like, yeah, man, I wish I had more time, or I wish I could have done this differently. I don't wish I could have done anything differently because then I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I like me. I'm not perfect. I need to be better, but I like me. I really do, you know, but I don't necessarily like the way I've spent some of my time. And I wish I could go back and tell myself to spend my time better, especially with people that I loved. You know, one of my last things with my grandmother, she was getting dementia and she wasn't remembering us very well. And that was really hard for me. But it was beautiful because she remembered Harper every time. She only met her a few times, but she always remembered Harper. And I had a goal the last time I saw my grandmother. I wanted to make her laugh one more time because God, I loved her laugh. I just needed one thing, one moment of time that I could just hold. And I looked at her and I said, hey, Grammy. And she had this moment of clarity and she goes, yes. And I said, Grams, I just want to let you know something. Thought a lot hard about this. I'm not going to invite you to my funeral. She looked at me and she goes, what? I said, I'm not inviting you to my funeral. She goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I don't think you're going to show up. And she laughed so hard. And I got it. And I got a moment. And then she was gone. But there was a piece of time where I had her. I got my laugh. I got a connection.
Mm.
And it meant so much to me. It meant more to me than speaking at her funeral because it was us laughing with each other. And You look back and you're like, man, how many more times could I have made her laugh? But you can't because you don't have that time anymore, right? But when you're a kid and you're 10 or 11, time's everything. Geez, how long is summer, right? How long is the weekend? How long is the school day? It's forever. So it doesn't have the importance that it has as you get older. But man, if I could somehow impart that wisdom, go back and tell myself or figure out a way to make it more valuable for my child, I would, because it's so, so important.
Time. How do you want to spend it? How do you want to use it? I can't imagine a better use of our time than being here with the two of you and sharing these moments, memories, and messages. Thank you both so much for your honesty, your authenticity, and your vulnerability as strong men. Hearing your stories, your journeys through life, career, fatherhood, the experiences that have shaped you has been meaningful and inspirational. And it's a reminder that none of us go through life untouched by both change and challenge.
And while our experiences shape us, so does the love we give, the love we receive, and the love we lose along the way. Loss isn't just about someone passing. It's the evolution of relationships, the unexpected endings, the shifts in identity, and the dreams that change course.
We know that in order to truly live, love, and leave a legacy, we have to acknowledge the losses, the lessons, and the moments that redefine who we are.
Which is why in our next episode, we're going to dive into that. What love and loss have looked like in your lives, what you've learned through those experiences, and how they continue to shape the way you show up for yourselves, for us, and for your families. Whew. What a conversation. Marcus and Jason, thank you both for sharing your stories, your journeys, and the moments that have shaped you into the people you are today.
This episode was about getting to know the men behind the boxes, not just as our partners, but as individuals with their own profound experiences of life, love, and loss.
And in our next episode, we're going to take it even deeper. We'll explore what love and loss have looked like for both of you, the lessons they've taught you, the ways they've shaped your relationships, and how they've influenced the legacy you're building.
And for those of you who are tuning in, we hope you'll join us for part 2 of this powerful conversation. And in the meantime, we want to hear from you. What are the moments that have shaped your life, your love, your losses, and your legacy?
Connect with us on Discord, OWN, or through our website at thepigpodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook to keep the conversation going.
And if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need to hear this story today.
Thank you for being here with us on this journey. Until next time, hugs and kisses.